All right, so another episode from the Coach's Desk. A couple times in these videos, we've used the term agency, like giving athletes a little bit of agency in the training. And funny enough, we actually talked quite a bit about this. You weren't there, but when I talked to Chuck Ritter and Bobby and Aaron on that Pineland Underground podcast, we were talking about this idea of agency, and if you write someone a program, they need to have a little bit of buy-in. And so this next program that we're about to do, we're going to utilize this idea of agency. So I wanted Jordan to kind of explain it and why it's going to be used in this next Warrior cycle, pretty much. What it is and why we use it. Agency.
Yeah, agency is essentially choose your own path. It is giving you some priority, some choice in what your training is going to look like. And the great thing about agency is the why of using it is that it provides athletes with buy-in. We are always prescribing what our athletes should be doing in the gym. And yet there's no way with all of the athletes that we have that we could prescribe a perfect set of training parameters for every single individual athlete that we have, with all of their different desires and preferences of process and desirable outcomes that they could want. Yet we can provide within the structures that we have different variations for them to pursue in accordance with a certain allocation of training percentage or training time. All right, and so the big thing of why we want to use agency is to provide the athlete with some control, some efficacy over their own training product. We can still give them the 85% of what we want them to do, but then also provide them with the most important, or provide them with some leeway to do what they need.
I think we talked about this a bit, and we were talking about the style of programming that Atomic has. We're like, hey, the programming in the gym is designed for our gym athletes.
Yes.
Now, the 300 gym athletes we have at this location, like the 100 and something we have at the North location, we have to understand that the vast majority of these people are recreational athletes, meaning that they're coming in, they want to train just to have better lives, be more physically fit, live longer, right? Agency has a lot less to do when you're training someone for a specific purpose. Military, like when you were training cycling, your coach didn't go like, hey, like what kind of training do you want to do, right? I mean, like he's like, no, this is what you're doing today. This is what power, how long you're going to be there. He's dictating volume, intensity, your training frequency. Those things are fixed because you were trying to be a competitive cyclist at the time. So agency doesn't have no role in that program design. For a gym like we have, right? People are coming in and they're all going to have slightly different desires, right? Some are, and preferences as well. And most of our athletes are preference-driven athletes because they're not training for something specific, right? A lot of our online programs, they're necessity-driven. Like, hey, this is what has to happen for you to be successful in A, B, or C, and this is what you need to do to get there. For the recreational athlete in the gym, they want to come in, they want to like get stronger, they want to get faster, they want to have fun and train with their friends, right? So that idea of agency is going to allow, like basically we're almost like parents when it comes to programming, right? We have to do what we think is best for the athletes, but also make sure that they're interested, that they want to train.
They got to eat their broccoli. They got to eat their cauliflower.
Cauliflower and the mashed potatoes, like but that. It's like
you put it in the mashed potatoes. Throw a little cheese in it.
You have to. It's like, you really do. It's like, hey, well, if we really wanted, I mean, if we wanted to build the fittest athletes in town, our programming would be very different.
It would.
But the thing is, no one would sign up and come. They would be like, if we said like, hey, these are the metrics that we want our athletes to do, our 3-mile time, strength endurance assessments, and this, our training would be very, very different, right? But the bottom line is that a lot of people want a better quality of life. They have different desires when they come to the gym and train in a recreational setting than they do a professional setting.
And one thing that another place in that Warrior cycle where athlete agency came up is basically in my criteria of what I think a good gym should have. Okay. So like I always question question our own product, right, and question like what we put out there. But also if I were to step into another gym or whenever I talk with other gym owners, whenever I talk with other people who are programming for other people, I would like to see some agency in their programming, and it's a good question to have. And if you're an athlete who's just stumbled upon these videos and you're looking for a new gym, maybe a question that you should ask yourself is, does this programming provide the athlete some agency over their own training? If the answer is flat out no, then probably find another gym, unless it is a very specific gym trying to like train you for a very specific competitive setting, in which that might actually be, saying no might actually be the best thing. Yeah. And another question is, on top of the why, and like when you wouldn't use it, like you're saying, like a cyclist or somebody who's training for a competitive thing, they don't really need a lot of agency. Their agency is choosing to have a coach and choosing to do that training program. That's where their agency ends, right? So when would you use it? Well, I'll speak from when we've used it. We've used it really in a lot of different ways. But we've only used it in one or the other. So you can use athlete agency in like a main primary lift. You can allow your athletes to choose their primary lifts, to choose a primary lift on a certain day or whatever in your microcycle. Or you can use it for accessory stuff. Some athletes really love to train core. Some athletes are like, I don't need any core training. I want to train like my hypertrophy for my arms or for my lower body or whatever. And so,
you're saying girls want to do core and guys want to do arms?
I mean, more or less. More or less. But so different athletes are, of course, are going to have different things that they want to do. Now, just to keep things simple though, we typically don't provide you agency in a primary movement selection and in a secondary movement selection. We kind of separate them so that you're choosing one during a cycle, or you're choosing another during the cycle. And then as we go through, or maybe not a cycle, maybe a phase, but as we go through it from one phase into another, maybe then we'll change where that agency lies. And that's simply to keep the programming understandable, all right? You want some flexibility to give people choice, but there's a paradox of choice at some point where it becomes hard to follow and hard to track over the course of time, because of course, programs don't just exist for 1 week or 2 weeks. They persist for many, many weeks and sometimes months. And so if you have too many choices, then it can become muddled.
You kind of have to stick with your path.
Yes.
So we'll give you a choice in the path. A good example is pick a lower body lift.
Yep.
Right? Front squat, back squat, overhead squat, whatever it may be. Pick a total body lift, snatch, power clean, full clean. Pick one that you like. They're all generally doing the same thing, and then stick with it. And then now we can apply progression to the program. You can continue to do that lift again and again and again. And it's a lift that you like, so you have a little bit of agency. You're going to be a little more bought into it. You're probably going to, for example, if you really like a certain lift, you'll come those days versus like looking down at your phone and being like, actually, I'm not going to go today because I hate that lift, So I think and even if you're programming for an individual who is doing something specific, the question is like, are they actually going to do it, right? Yep. And if they have agency, if they have some choices in there, they will do it. So I think it's one of those things that great to use. You have to limit how much you give people. But ultimately it's like, hey, if it's doing volume and intensity, right? The exercise is just a means to an end. If that exercise is getting done what I want to get done, and then they stick with it, we'll apply the progression, we'll manipulate volume and intensity as we move through a program, and then the results will come.
That's right.
Yep.